زہرا ہائے زہرا ہائے زہرا ہائے زہرا
تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہیے زہرا،
تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہیے زہرا،
امت نے تیری بابا،
امت نے تیری بابا
در میرا جلا ڈالا،
تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہیے زہرا، تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہیے زہرا،
اس درد کی شدت میں ہے موت میری درمان، جینے کا میرے بابا اب کوئی نہیں مکان، ہر سانس پہ کرتی ہوں،
ہر سانس پہ کرتی ہوں
مرنے کی دعا بابا،
تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہیے زہرا، تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہیے زہرا،
نازوں کی پلی بیٹی بابا تیری زہرا ہوں، کل تک میں گلستان تھی اب ذات میں صحرا ہوں، ہر سانس قضا ہے،
ہر سانس قضا ہے،
مجھ پہ بس تو ٹوٹا،
تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہیے زہرا، تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہیے زہرا،
ہے گریا کنا زینا شبیر بھی گریاں ہے، زہرا بھی تیری بابا کچھ روز کی مہمان ہے، رنجور ہے حیدر بھی،
رنجور ہے حیدر بھی،
اور نوح کو نافذہ،
تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہیے زہرا، تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہیے زہرا،
جو ظلم ہوئے مجھ پر حسنین نے دیکھے ہیں، بازو ہے میرے زخمی رخسار بھی نیلے ہیں، زینب کو دکھاؤں گی،
زینب کو دکھاؤں گی،
کس طرح میں یہ چہرہ،
تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہیے زہرا، تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہیے زہرا،
در جلتا ہوا میرے پہلو پہ گرایا ہے، محسن کی شہادت کا صدمہ بھی دکھایا ہے، اب کون سا محشر ہے جو مجھ پہ نہیں گزرا،
تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہیے زہرا، تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہیے زہرا،
ناموں سے پیمبر پر ایک حشر ہوا برپا اور چشم امامت میں تھا خون کا ایک دریا، کچھ کر نہ سکا بابا، کچھ کر نہ سکا بابا، حیدر تھرسن بستا،
تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہی ہے زہرا، تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہی ہے زہرا،
اے شمس عجب منظر تاریخ میں یہ دیکھا، کل جس کے اشارے پر سورج بھی پلٹ آیا، آج اس کو بچانے کو،
آج اس کو بچانے کو
دربار گئی زہرا،
تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہی ہے زہرا، تھامے ہوئے پہلو کو کہتی رہی ہے زہرا، اے زہرا، اے زہرا، اے زہرا، اے زہرا،
ہائے زہرا۔ ماں آپ ہیں کہاں، آپ ہیں کہاں،
آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں،
شبرو شبیر دیتے تھے یہ رو رو کے صدا،
آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں،
ہے جہاں پر آپ ہم کو بھی بلا لیجیے وہیں، آپ کی فرقت میں دل کو چین اب آتا نہیں، یاد ہم کو آ رہی ہے آپ کی بے انتہا،
آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں،
دل پھٹا جاتا ہے ہم کیسے بھلائے آپ کو، ایک بار آ کے تو اماں حال میرا دیکھ لو، آنکھ سے آنسو رواں ہے، دل تڑپتا ہے میرا،
آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں،
ہائے رو
قبر پر نانا کی جا کر بات یہ بتلاؤں گا، ہر سامنے میرے تماچا آپ کو مارا گیا، آپ ہے کہاں،
آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں،
جانتی تھی آپ پیاسا رہ نہیں سکتا آپ سے، فکر میں شبیر کی سوتی نہیں تھی رات بھر، ڈھونڈتی ہے آپ کو آنکھیں ہماری ہر جگہ،
آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے
جب تلک زندہ ہے ہم کو خون رلائے گا یہ غم، آپ کا دربار میں جانا نہیں بھولیں گے ہم، کر دیا امت نے ہائے آپ کو ہم سے جدا،
آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں،
دیکھ کر چہرہ ہمارا چین آتا تھا تمہیں، دور ہم سے ہو گئی کیا بھول پاؤ گی ہمیں، دیکھیے نوحہ مسلسل ہے یہی شبیر کا،
آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے
سن کے نوحہ اشک بارہ لے اذا ہونے لگے، قبر میں حسنین ماں کی یاد میں رونے لگے، جس گھڑی ذیشان اور عمران نے نوحہ پڑھا،
آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذا حشر الناس كانوا لهم أعداء وكانوا بعبادتهم كافرين وإذا تتلى عليهم آياتنا بينات قال الذين كفروا للحق لما جاءهم هذا سحر مبين أم يقولون افتراه قل إن افتريته فلا تملكون لي من الله شيئا هو أعلم بما تفيضون فيه كفى به شهيدا بيني وبينكم وهو الغفور الرحيم قل ما كنت بدعا من الرسل وما أدري ما يفعل بي ولا بكم إن أتبع إلا ما يوحى إلي وما أنا إلا نذير مبين قل أرأيتم إن كان من عند الله وكفرتم به وشهد شاهد من بني إسرائيل على مثله فآمن واستكبرتم إن الله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين وقال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا لو كان خيرا ما سبقونا إليه وإذ لم يهتدوا به فسيقولون هذا إفك قديم ومن قبله كتاب موسى إماما ورحمة وهذا كتاب مصدق لسانا عربيا لينذر الذين ظلموا وبشرى للمحسنين إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون أولئك أصحاب الجنة خالدين فيها جزاء بما كانوا يعملون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, Tuesday, the 4th of January 2022, is the eve of the 1st of Jumadul Akhir 1443. The program over the next few days will be online as follows. Tomorrow, Wednesday, the 5th of January, the program will start at 8 p.m. with Quran and the Majlis by Syed Asad Jaffri. You're also requested to please recite 5 times Ayyam for all those who are unwell, especially Brother Muhammad Raza Laka, and to all those who are poorly. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. الفاتحة. شفاء مرضى.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. जनाब ज़हरा सलामुल्लाह अलैह की शान में कलाम। नूर की अंजमन फातिमा, नूर के अंजमन फातिमा, नूर की अंजमन फातिमा, मरकज़े पंजतन फातिमा, نور کی انجمن فاطمہ عرش سے بن کے آئی ہے تو عرش سے بن کے آئی ہے تو مرتضیٰ کی دلہن فاطمہ نور کی انجمن فاطمہ کہکشاں سے بجا دایاسی کہکشاں سے بھی زیادہ یاسی تیرے گھر کا چمن فاطمہ نور کی انجمن فاطمہ خلد کا عرش پر ہے گما خلد کا عرش پر ہے گما چھو کے تیرے قدم فاطمہ چھو کے تیرے چرن فاطمہ کب کسے ماں نے پیدا کیے کب کسی ماں نے پیدا کیے پھر حسین و حسن فاطمہ نور کی انجمن فاطمہ بن گیا تیرا باغ فدق بن گیا تیرا باغ فدق غاصبوں کا کفن فاطمہ غاصبوں کا کفن فاطمہ بولے زینب سے روح علی بولے زینب سے روح علی سر اٹھا اور بن فاطمہ سر اٹھا اور بن فاطمہ ہے یہ قول نبی ہے سروش ہے یہ قول نبی ہے سروش میرا تن میرا دھن فاطمہ نور کی انجمن فاطمہ تیرے شوہر کے در سے ملا تیرے شوہر کے در سے ملا ہم کو ریز کے سخن فاطمہ نور کی انجمن فاطمہ اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد
اور محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد. سینے میں لیے رنج و علم کرب و بلا کا، بابا سے ہے ملنے کو چلی ام ابیہا، آنکھوں سے لہو بہتا ہے، پہلو ہے شکستہ، یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا. سینے میں ازل سے ہی میرے کرب و بلا ہے، جانتے ہوئے زہرا نے یہ دنیا سے کہا ہے، کیا شام میں ہونا ہے یہ سب مجھ کو پتا ہے، تپتے ہوئے صحرا میں ہے شبیر کا لاشا، یا فاطمہ زہرا. امت نے بہت آپ کو تر پایا ہے بی بی، ہر حق کے لیے آپ کو ترسایا ہے بی بی، غاصب نے جو دربار میں بلوایا ہے بی بی، اس دکھ سے لرزنے لگا خود عرش خدا کا، یا فاطمہ زہرا. شبیر کی دنیا میں ولادت سے بھی پہلے کہتی تھی یہ زہرا کہ بہت سہتی ہوں صدمے، بچہ یہ میرا کوک میں بے چین بہت ہے، بچہ میرا کہتا ہے کہ اماں میں ہوں پیاسا، یا فاطمہ زہرا. دنیا سے چلی کہتی ہوئی بنت پیمبر، غم کرب و بلا کا ہے لیے یہ دل مضطر، آتا ہے تصور میں میرے شام کا منظر، اللہ رکھے زینب و کلثوم کا پردہ، یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا. یہ کام رہا صدیوں سے بس اہل عزا کا، پیاسوں کے لیے بہتا رہا اشکوں کا دریا، شبیر کا پرسا دیا زہرا کو ہمیشہ، شبیر کو دو مادرے شبیر کا پرسا، یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا. اور محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يوم ندعو كل أناس بإمامهم صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Our discussion has reached the second night of Fatimiyya, and last night as a preliminary, as an opening lecture to my 5 nights with all of you there at Al-Zahra with the Stanmore community as well, is that we kind of took a little bit of a different look at the days of Fatimiyya and maybe moved a little bit away from the historical discussion and moved towards a more of a transformational one. And we described the idea that if the focus could somehow now be elements of deviation, not so much the deviator himself, then maybe now it can become a little bit more of a catalyst for change of ourselves within ourselves. I think over the years now, the 4 or 5 years, at least 10 years now, where the focus really has been on Fatimiyya, communities across the globe now have really stepped up, to add to this commemoration. I think the history of the event of the door now has been wide, has been open wide, it has been kind of, busted wide open, as they say, and discussions have been made, documentaries have been made, and, it's now no longer become a secret what has happened to our mother. Now, perhaps maybe in an era where we are being constantly bombarded by different elements of deviation, different paths of inhiraf, maybe we need to kind of look inwards and let history and the individuals responsible for this heinous crime now, let them be for a bit, and let's look inwards to see, what? Where would I be on the side of history when we have such polarizing figures in events, be it on the plains of Karbala, be it on the day of Ghadir, be it during this very difficult, tense era inside of Medina and Mecca, post-Rasulullah? What side of history would we be at? And are we assuming that because something now makes sense to me now, it's going to always make sense to me, or it would have always made sense to me? So that's where I talked a little bit about last night, about the idea that it's not so much about identifying our leader, it's more about allowing that leader to lead us. Or perhaps more importantly, allowing ourselves to be led by them. One discussion that we brought up last night was that how could it be that the leaders of the ummah, quote unquote, arrived at the door of the beloved daughter of their holy prophet? Which means there was some sort of mix-up there, right? They weren't taking the prophet as a leader the way they should have. Otherwise, 95 days is not a long time, right? I mean, when initially tragedy hits for a family, sometimes it takes a year for them to really kind of, embrace this new normal, at least 6 months, So something tells me that there was already this hidden sort of deviation inside of them that now was manifesting itself post Rasulullah. And so, we have to kind of stop and ask ourselves, do I have those hidden deviating tools inside of me today or not? Right? So now it becomes a transformational discussion. Khair. What I want to kind of continue forward tonight with all of you is the idea and the process that the Ahlul Bayt, and specifically the Imam of our time, these are not individuals, this is not a household that is only to be admired. Admiration is one level, and with all due respect, it's a very basic level. When we celebrate the birth or perhaps commemorate the shahadat of our 8th Imam, Imam Rada alayhi salatu wassalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There's usually a discussion by the alim, either in the Jashan or the Majlis, as to the laqab of Ar-Rida of our 8th Imam. Why is he known as the one who was pleasing for others? What was it about him? And we learn to find out that not only was it that his followers were pleased by him, his family was pleased by him, but hatta his enemies also were pleased by him. So admiring the Ahlul Bayt, with all due respect, is not a major feat that we've accomplished, as Shias specifically. We have to now make that very, very important transition from admiration to emulation. From the idea that, look, I don't only see them as a path of distinction and fada'il, I see them as a path of guidance and salvation. That guidance and salvation will be achieved only when there is this concept of emulation, not only admiration. Okay? And that's in everything. Okay, it's in their beliefs, it's in their salat, it's in their sawm, it's in their hajj, for example. It's also in their tawalla and their tabarra as well. Okay, so many of us now, in preparation for our hajj trip, for example, our hajj trip, we will read the conversation between Shibli and Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. That many Hajj groups now hand out this documentation, this paperwork, to kind of prepare yourself. And in that conversation, of course, Imam Syed describes the reality of the various manasik of Hajj, the various kind of dimensions of Hajj. And that, we'll do our best to follow to a T. If I read or an alim shares with me a hadith where Imam Sadiq, for example, now is describing to his companion, this is exactly how the Holy Prophet now prayed salat, for example, hatta where he put his fingers, how high his elbows were, where his hands were, how low his ruku was, blah, 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 then we would follow that to a T. But sometimes we become selective in our emulation. Remember, we're trying to create a path of submission. We're trying to make sure that we are not only accept them as leaders, but we want to be and we train ourselves to be led by them. To be led by someone means that even in those moments where I want to go down one path, the leader says to go down the other, I say, okay. So when the imam arrives and says, look, this is your path, you are to walk on this path, I'll say, look, ya Imam Zamana, I'm better on this path. My ata'at, my idea of emulation of him, or my idea of following the imam will be, look, doesn't matter what you want, Asad, you got to follow what he says. Okay? We can begin that from now for all the previous imams. One thing that, this era and this Ayyam and these days of Fatimiyya kind of breeds and brings about is a whole discussion on tabarra. And I'm not here to talk about, the existence of tabarra. Tabarra is a furu of the deen. Tabarra is wajib with conditions. Tabarra is something that somebody cannot make a haram which was made halal, cannot remove something the Prophet of Allah, of course, planted or labeled as the branches of the religion. So discussion never is about the existence of tabarra. It's absolutely about the expression of tabarra. How should now one disassociate with the enemies? How should one now express that disassociation? And there's been all sorts of different creative ways, all sorts of hashtags and memes and blah, 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 and all these things on social media that, people think that, oh, okay, this is a code that nobody understands but the Shias. Meanwhile, everybody understands exactly what a light bulb is. So, those kind of discussions, are a little bit away from the intellectual aspect. Maybe it's a little bit of fun and games, I don't know. But I want to speak a little bit tonight about the idea that if we want to truly now be led by the Imams and by the Imam themselves, then we have to be able now to understand what they did and how they were able to express certain aspects of the deen. Okay, I'll give you a couple examples to really kind of bring my point home. Let's use this commemoration, the historical events of this commemoration. Now, usually, these things are kind of made for or left for the Masai portion of this commemoration. But I really want us to look at it through the logical aspect. If you have a moment, if you're on your phones, if you have a Nahj al-Balagha app or you're able to access it on your bookmarks, Nahj al-Balagha khutbah number 202. Okay. Khutbah of Amir al-Mu'mineen in Nahj al-Balagha of 202 is a very important one. Okay? Talks about his grief when it comes to Sayyidah Fatima, talks about the events of what he said after he buried her. There's a line in there that really kind of stood out to me. Okay? And the line is that he addresses the Holy Prophet, buries Fatima, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah, and then says this line, وَسَتُنَبِّئُكَ إِبْنَتُكَ بِتَضَافُرِ أُمَّتِكَ عَلَى حَزْمِهَا. Your daughter, he says, will tell you, will give you khabar, will inform you, okay? Will inform you of what? Of the fact that what? بِتَضَافُرِ ummatika, your ummah. He's talking to the Holy Prophet now. Really understand this statement. It is a powerful one. It is a devastating one. It breaks the heart into pieces, shatters the heart into pieces. But it is exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to following the path of the Ahlul Bayt and emulating, not just admiring, not just grieving, not just celebrating, not just commemorating. Those might be for others. We are emulators of the path of the Ahlul Bayt. It's not a buffet system where I choose Shibli's Hajj, I choose Imam Salih's Salat, but I leave the Barra the way that I want to do it, or I leave this the way I want to do it. No, sorry. If we want to admire and we want to emulate the Ahlul Bayt, it's in everything. Because they're a ma'soom, perfect family. Why would we want to pick and choose? He says now, your daughter will apprise you of what? Will inform you of what? Of what? بِتَزَافُرِ أُمَّتِكَ عَلَى عَذْمِهَا. Okay? That this entire ummah now joined together, came together to do what? عَلَى حَزْمِهَا. Hazm, they say, they have even, in terms of Urdu, when they talk about, kana hazm ho gaya, for example, okay? The food has been digested. What happens to in the process of digestion? It's broken down into pieces to the point where it kind of now disperses, and the food, at least in your stomach, is no longer there. Okay, it's been removed, or it's been broken into pieces, or it's been sort of like, removed is a better word. Okay, look at what Imam Ali is saying. Your daughter will tell you herself when she sees you that this ummah, your ummah, this is not the non-Muslims, this is not the Jewish tribes of Medina, this is not the Christians of Najran, this is not, nobody else. Ummatika. ummatika, your ummah. Khutbah 202. These are not my words. No, these are strictly, Sayyid Radhi now has compiled this. Khutbah number 202. Open it, it's right there, plain and simple. That your daughter will tell you that this ummah of yours came together. Everyone came together to remove Fatima. The question is why? Right? The question is why? And this statement is the ultimate statement of Tabarra of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says everything without saying everything. Understand my point here. He says everything without saying everything. In fact, he actually takes on the approach of the Quran, the balaghat and fasahat of the Quran, the very first discussion and the ijaz of the Quran. If anyone has done any ulum Quran discussions, you know that inside the science of the Quran, there is one science of the Quran of the miracle nature of the Quran. We claim the Quran is a miracle that is eternal. It's the only miracle of any of the prophets that has outlasted the prophet itself. Every other miracle of Nabi Musa's staff, Nabi Isa's medicine, all that was a miracle during the life and times of the prophet. The Quran, of course, was revealed during the prophet's time. It is a miracle during his lifetime. But, however, it is a miracle that even today now is still a miracle, even though the prophet now has moved on to his next life, has left this world. The first discussion in the ijaz of the Quran is balaghat and fasahat. It says everything, but it's very eloquent in its speech. Does not ramble on. There are individuals who speak for 45 minutes, 1 hour, like me, and you get nothing out of it. You get zero out of it. 45 minutes, this guy's rambling on from Toronto. He's talking for 45 minutes, you get nothing out of it. Then there are those that speak for 5 minutes and they shake your core. They move mountains. They completely capture the room. The Quran now is that. The Quran now uses beautiful, simple words, and it uses this beautiful approach and sometimes not giving all the details. I'll give you an example, and I want to tie this example back to that statement of Nahj al-Balagha of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Surah Yusuf. Surah Yusuf is the 12th chapter of the Quran. It's that chapter of the Quran, it's the only chapter of the Quran designed like this, where it is a chronologically based story of Nabi Yusuf's life, from his dream all the way to the reuniting of him and his family when he became the prince. Okay? Usually, all other stories, Nabi Musa's story, the Prophet of Allah's story, there's bits and pieces. This is the one story of Nabi Yusuf that from the beginning to the end now. There comes a moment now, where him and Zulaykha now, okay, the first lady of Egypt essentially, are together in a room. He's young, she's beautiful, but without getting into all the details. Like sometimes, Hollywood and sometimes Bollywood, they really have to spell everything out and include all of these very private, personal details of what happens. You don't need to do all that. The Quran is so baligh and so fasih that, it says everything without saying everything. Verse 24. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Understand the Prophet when he says, I'm leaving behind thaqalain, two heavy things, two things that are thaqil, that are heavy. Understand this. When we understand this verse, then we go back to the khutbah. Let's understand this verse. The verse says what? وَلَقَدْ حَمَّتْ بِهِ وَحَمَّا بِهَا. Certainly she was made for him, and he would have been made for her. There's no reason for these two not to be together. It doesn't go into laws of attraction. It doesn't go into details about how Zulaykha looked, what she was wearing, what Nabi Yusuf looked like, blah, blah, blah. Nothing. Quran simply says, وَلَقَدْ حَمَّتْ بِهِ وَحَمَّا بِهَا. This union would have happened. لَوْلَا. Were it not for what? أَنْ رَعَيَ بُرْهَانًا رَبِّي. If it wasn't the fact that he had seen the burhan, the manifest evidence of what? Of his Lord. Rabbihi, of his Lord. He, of course, refers to Nabi Yusuf. Had it not been the fact that God was this authoritative figure at that moment for Nabi Yusuf, knowing full well that if he had acted on what he wanted to do, that would have caused problems. In all of this half of a verse of verse number 24 of Surah Yusuf, the Quran says everything without saying everything, without getting into all of those awkward details between a man and a woman. But yet the message is very clear. Had it not been for his fear of God, he would have acted on what he wanted. وَلَقَدْ حَمَّتْ بِهِ وَحَمَّا بِهَا. She was for him, he was for her. That statement alone is enough to understand the emotional context, the physical context, what exactly was about to transpire, the moment inside the room, but without getting onto all of these, like I said, these details that sometimes are, quite personal and quite awkward, right? Look at the approach of the Quran. Beautiful. Everything is said without everything being said. Now come to the khutbah of 202. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, your daughter will tell you. The entire ummah united ala hazmiha, to remove her. Meaning what? In this statement now he paints a picture. Fatima is on one side, the ummah is on the other. If you accept Fatima to be haqq, if you accept Fatima to be righteousness, if you expect Fatima to be that face and that pillar of the deen and the faith, then anything that comes across or comes encounter or against Fatima would have to be falsehood. If she is haqq, the person now trying to remove them is falsehood. Imam Ali says everything, identifies the enemy, disassociates the enemy without saying everything, without lowering himself to a level of ridicule, without lowering himself to a level of name-calling, without lowering himself to a level where his tongue now is out of control. And yet, it is the biggest announcement of tabarra that I have seen. Amir al-Mu'mineen flat out says, your daughter will tell you what they did. They all joined forces now to remove your daughter. Why? Because she was a thorn in their side. She was a reminder of what they were doing in Saqifa and post-Saqifa was wrong. So if you remove Fatima from the equation, we're home free. She was the one that would take Imam Ali door to door and say, were you not in Ghadir? Were you not in Ghadir? Yes, we were. Did you not place your hand in my husband's hand and give bayat? Yes, we did. Then why are you quiet now? Why are you allowing this Saqifa to happen? They knew that. Remove Fatima from the equation, everything else is home free. So they want to paint this rosy picture of post-Rasulullah as, the flourishing years of Islam, when in reality it was Fatima's story that is the black spot in this warped, fictitious fantasy of a world that they want history now to report. And that's why another factor that was huge in this idea is something called Baytul Huzn. The house of sorrow. What is the house of sorrow? That house where Sayyida Fatima now is crying over the grief of her father. The neighbors, the ummah, possibly now the khulafa now, are approaching Imam Ali and saying, look, either tell her to cry in the morning or cry at night. She can't cry all day. She's either affecting our day work or she's affecting our sleep. So what happens now? Imam Ali constructs this room, this house, this sort of like dwelling where Fatima now, if she wants to cry, she can cry there. What was it about her cry? What was it about her cry that posed such a threat to them that they would actually try to stop those tears? Baba, she just lost her father, man. Let her grieve. Why is her grieving affecting you so much? Why can't you sleep at night? What is going on with your conscience? What is it that those tears and the sound of her crying reminding you of that you want silence and you don't quiet? Do you understand my point? On top of that, when people would come to Medina for condolences of the Prophet of Allah's passing. Remember, the state of Islam at the end of the Prophet's life was such that it was flourishing, it was expanding. There were people in Kufa and Yemen and all sorts of places that have now built up Islamic empires and built up Islamic communities. They were all coming towards the Arabian Peninsula to extend their condolences. They would enter, let's say, for example, Medina, and they would see nothing but, what? A festival of power? A joyous event of government and Khilafat? So where would they go? They would go to that house that was crying. That house that was in sorrow. That woman who was crying for her father. That woman who morning and evening would cry and cry and cry. They would understand, you know what? If we want to send our condolences to anybody, we're going right to this Baytul Huzn, this house of sorrow, and giving this woman, the daughter of Rasulullah, our condolences. And when they would go and do that, that's when Fatima now would speak in defense of the wilayat of her husband. When you speak in defense of the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen post-Saqifa, you're bound to talk about those people who took that Ghadiri moment away. That becomes the disassociation of the enemies of the Prophet, of the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt. Says everything without saying everything. Understand, this is the emulation we need today. If you sit there and you tell me, بِتَظَافُرِ عَلَى حَزْمِهَا أُمَّتِكَ عَلَى حَزْمِهَا, your ummah has joined forces, came together to remove Fatima. Why Fatima was that manifestation, that remembrance, that reminder of the dhulm you did against my father, your holy prophet. You can remove Fatima, and you did, but the conscience that's eating away at you, that would be easily triggered by the sound of the tears of Fatima, who will take that away from you? How will you handle that? How will you handle that voice inside of you? How many times will you quiet and silence and muzzle that voice inside of you that's telling you that this is not the path of the emulation of the Holy Prophet? In kuntum tuhibbuna Allah, fattabi'uni yuhbibkum Allah. The Quran says, you claim to love Allah, you want to love Allah, you claim that you want to be loved by Allah as well. Fattabi'uni, the Prophet says, follow my path, emulate my path. Not just while he's alive. The dynasty he left behind, the empire he left behind. Don't be those individuals who takes this beautiful, strong, waving flag of Islam and cuts it into pieces. And Fatima is the one that's stopping you from cutting the pieces. Remove her ala hazmiha and continue chopping away, such that Islam now is in bits and pieces, and you're celebrating this. Well, Fatima is that reminder of your failure. Everything is said without everything being said. Let's give a few more examples. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. One very important hadith that we have inside of Islamic theology is that of what's called a hadith manzila, or manzila as they say in Farsi. It's that hadith where the Holy Prophet now compares him and Imam Ali to Nabi Musa and Nabi Harun, correct? Anta minni bimanzilatin Haruna min Musa illa annahu la nabiyya ba'di. Okay? You are to me at that level, bimanzilati, like Harun was to Musa, talking to Imam Ali. You are to me as Harun was to Musa, except there is no prophet after me. Okay? Where does Imam Ali get this emulation or get this beautiful methodology of saying everything without saying everything? Some things don't need to be spelled out, right? Like sometimes they say in Urdu ke aqal man ke liye ishara kafi hai, right? For a logical individual, intellectual individual, sometimes an indication is everything. You don't just spell out every little detail. Sometimes, like I said, the way that it's presented, everything is being said. Where did Imam Ali get this point from? From the Holy Prophet. In this hadith. This hadith usually is used in theology, in aqaid, in imamat, to prove the successorship of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Okay? Right? Anyone now who has studied anything in terms of, the power or the authority after the Holy Prophet, you must have come across this hadith. Okay? Hadith al-Manzilah is a very important hadith. But I want you to look at this hadith now through the lens of what we're talking about tonight. I'll keep coming back to it. Let's park the hadith for one side, come to the Quran. Remember Thaqalain, right? Quran wa Ahl Bayt. Kitab Allah wa itrati. The book of Allah and my itrat, the Prophet says. Look at the way these two now work well together. How sometimes even the way they communicate is almost eerily similar. Surah Baqarah. Okay? In the first 9 nights of the month of Zul Hijjah, there is a recommended a'mal, a salat that is to be formed. A lot of you, mashallah, do this between Maghrib and Isha. Where now we are asked to remember the 40 nights that were appointed to Nabi Musa to go up and see your Lord. Okay? وَإِذْ وَعَدْنَا مُوسَى أَرْبَعِينَ لَيْلَةً. Okay? I'm sorry, not this one. It's another one. وَعَدْنَا مُوسَى. It's similar, but it's a different verse. The context is what? That now Nabi Musa is asked, after everything is gone now, Fir'aun is gone now, he's with the Bani Israel tribe now, right? And really, the story of Nabi Musa has slowly become my favorite story, only because the parallels between the Bani Israel tribe and us today is incredible. And so many lessons can be learned from this tribe. This is that moment now where Nabi Musa is being told by Allah to come and see me up on the mountain for 30 nights. Okay? He's led the Bani Israel tribe. He has shown them that, look, we have brought down Fir'aun, one miracle after one miracle after one miracle. Everything is there. Now he's saying, look, I need to go see my Lord for 30 nights. Harun is in charge while I'm gone. Okay? Harun, my brother, Aaron, is in charge while I'm gone. Okay? Again, emulation, right? Emulation. So, quick story. He leaves Nabi Musa, begins his 30-night journey, is told that 10 more nights now will be added. Okay? So while the Bani Israel tribe is expecting him back on day 30, he's been told that you'll stay an extra 10 days with me, so it'll become 40 nights. Surah Baqarah, verse number 51 is in front of you. وَإِذْ وَعَدْنَا مُوسَى أَرْبَعِينَ لَيْلَةً. When we appointed a time of 40 nights with Musa, what did they do now? Imagine now, 30 nights have passed, 31 nights now, 32nd night, where is he? He's not here. 33rd night, 36th night, he's not coming. He told us 30 nights. It's now what? He's 7 days late, 8 days late. He's not coming. Forget Harun. We will go along and do our own thing. All throughout this whole story of Nabi Musa and the Bani Israel, they always refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Rabbuka, as your Lord, Musa. You and your Lord go fight to free up Palestine and Jerusalem. Go fight. We will sit right here. Let us know when the coast is clear. Well, never did they ever refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as their Lord. Always your Lord. Musa, you and your Lord. Musa, ask your Lord. Musa, tell your Lord. Musa, you and your Lord. It's always your Lord, your Lord, your Lord. It never really it never really sunk into them, this idea that we want to submit now to the Rabb and Lord of Harun and Musa. No. So now can you imagine now, 32 nights, 34 nights, 38 nights, no sign of Musa. Do you see him? Have you seen him? No, blah, blah, blah. No, not at all. Because he didn't go back and tell them those 10 more nights. 10 nights, everything they did. We talk about 95 years after the Prophet's death now. The door is being burned. This is 10 extra nights. What happens? What do they do? ثُمَّ أَتَّخَذْتُمُ الْعِجْلَ. They take a calf to be their God. A small little cow. مِن بَعْدِهِ وَأَنْتُمْ ظَالِمُونَ. And you are the ones that have been unjust. It's only been 10 days. 10 days now, your iman, your aqidah, itna kamzore. It's that weak. The 10 nights now, okay, you know what? Forget that. Let's go all the way back to our idol worshipping days. You forgot everything that Nabi Musa taught you. You forgot all the miracles you saw of Nabi Musa. You saw the way he dismantles Fir'aun's kingdom. You saw him now on the day of the festival now, his staff now, his serpent now, devoured those of these vetted magicians of Fir'aun. You saw the sea get parted and then come crashing down on Fir'aun. You asked for extra food, special food, because you were tired of eating the same food. Extra food, special food was given to you. All sorts of concessions were given to you. All of that on one side, 10 days on the other. And they did. They took an animal for a god. After all that, for 10 days, after everything they saw. When Musa comes back and says, what's happening here? Turns to Harun. Harun says, I tried. They would not listen to me. I mean, the state of the ummah of Nabi Musa was to the point where he was gone for 10 days, out of sight, out of mind, right? Where's the submission there? To the point where not only did they deny God, but now they replace God with an animal. The ultimate insult to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now come to the Holy Prophet's hadith. Now come to the Holy Prophet's hadith. Oh, look at the way the Ahlul Bayt now would disassociate themselves, announce themselves, or announce to their followers who your enemy is. What are their characteristics? Anta minni bimanzilatil Haruna min Musa illa annahu la nabiyya ba'di. You are to me as Harun was to Musa. What did the ummah of Musa do to Harun? Turn their back on him. What did the ummah of the Prophet do to Ali? Turn their back on him. 10 days he's gone to the mountain, they take the calf. 95 days he's gone, the Prophet of Allah, they burn his daughter's door down. Look at the beautiful, logical, intellectual way the Ahlul Bayt now do this thing that we call tabarra. Disassociate themselves with individuals. Call out the individuals. Whether it's Khutbah 202 of Nahj al-Balagha or Hadith al-Manzila of the Holy Prophet. Subhanallah. This is where emulation is needed. This is where the idea is that we understand and take them to be individuals who what? Who are our leaders. This is how it's done. Nobody listens to individuals who are ranting and raving and using all sorts of words and this and that. Obviously a person who's lost control of their emotions and their tongue and blah, blah, blah. What purpose are you serving? And look at the way the Ahlul Bayt do it. Sometimes they do it without the person that they're doing it to even realize it's been done to them. But it's all recorded in history. This is all part of being led by the Ahlul Bayt. Allowing yourselves to be led by the Ahlul Bayt. Yes, I enjoy a good hashtag. I enjoy a good meme. Yes, I'm also angry in these days. I can't fathom too much. I can't even begin to think about the moment too much. I can't understand how they walked the way they walked with firewood in their hands. I can't fathom that. My heart sometimes doesn't let me, dissect the idea or accept the idea that these were Muslims, quote unquote, that did this to the door of Fatima. That when they came to the door and they said that you are to send out Ali, we know he's in there, come to the mosque and give bay'at and allegiance to the first Khalifa. There was no answer, the begging continued, and then now the one to answer the door was Fatima. The lone defender of the wilaya of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Syed Fatima Zahra. My salams to you, Shahzadi. My salams to you, Shahzadi. They come at the door. It's one thing to threaten to burn the house, to burn the home down. It's one thing now to bring wood and pile it at the door, at the bottom of the door. The rage on their face. And they're told, do you not know that there are small little children in this house? The same children, the same Hussein is in that house. The Prophet of Allah now would place Hussein on his lap, kiss his neck, kiss his forehead. The same Hussein that the Prophet of Allah would say multiple times, Husseinu minni wa ana min Hussein, just so everyone knew the maqam of Hussein when it came to their beloved Holy Prophet. If anyone knew Hussein, they knew Hussein to be the beloved grandson of the Holy Prophet. That Hussein is inside that house. There's small children here. Will you burn down the house with small children here? Forget being a Muslim, forget being religious. Are you even a human being? And they simply say that we don't care. Just 2 minutes of Masa'ib into Masaduha. Your heart is shattering, my heart is shattering. You should know the way the homes were made back then. Even sometimes you see it today in some Islamic countries. When you open the initial door of the house, you can't see inside the house. Why? Because there's another wall and then there's a door on that wall. That door actually enters into the actual house where now you can see the family members now walking around. That's simply to protect the women inside the home from hijab. So now Sayyidah Fatima is at the first door. Behind her is a wall. Now they have this conversation in between a door. They go back and forth. It becomes heated. There becomes a moment now where Fatima now says, Ali won't come out. As long as I am here, Ali won't come out. Fatima stood there. On one side, Ali. On the other side, individuals now who want Ali to come out for bay'at. Fatima stands there, physically defending her husband, that I will not send Ali out. I will not send Ali out. If you want to burn the door down, burn the door down. But you won't get my husband. My salams to you, Fatima. But do you understand? There wasn't one man. There were several men. And several men were men now who had but now pushed the door to the point where on behind her was the wall, in front of her was the door. The impact of the door on Fatima was to the point where immediately when she hit the wall, in front of her the door, behind her the wall, she completely lost consciousness. They dragged Ali into the masjid. Sayyidah Fatima now, unconscious on the ground, bleeding now. Mohsin is shaheed. Her ribs are broken. When Asma bint Umays, when Fizza comes and now tends to their wounds, when she gains consciousness, my salams to you, Fatima. She doesn't ask about Mohsin, forgets her own pain, forgets everything else. The only thing that she asks is, Aina Abul Hassan? Aina Abul Hassan? Where is Ali? Where is Ali? They took Ali to the masjid. Sayyidah Fatima now goes inside the masjid now, and one jumla, one sentence that is historical and iltimas dua. When she went to the masjid with two of her sons beside her, she went on her own power. I don't know what happened inside of that masjid. I don't even want to think about what happened inside that masjid. But when she came back from the masjid, she had to be helped towards the house. No 18-year-old has to be helped inside the house unless the damages and the injuries are so much that she can't walk without a sahara. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. ماتم حسين يا حسين يا حسين.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya Hussein. اے شاہ انبیاء یہ مسلمان نے کیا کیا، اے شاہ انبیاء یہ مسلمان نے کیا کیا، اے شاہ انبیاء یہ مسلمان نے کیا کیا. منبر پہ فاطمہ کا، منبر پہ فاطمہ کا مجرم بٹھا دیا، اے شاہ انبیاء یہ مسلمان نے کیا کیا، اے شاہ انبیاء یہ مسلمان نے کیا کیا. اتری ہے جن کی شان میں آیات بار بار، جن کی رضا کو رد نہ کرے رب کردگار. حق مانگنے گئی تھی خالی لٹا دیا، اے شاہ انبیاء یہ مسلمان نے کیا کیا، اے شاہ انبیاء یہ مسلمان نے کیا کیا. منبر پہ فاطمہ کا، منبر پہ فاطمہ کا مجرم بٹھا دیا، اے شاہ انبیاء یہ مسلمان نے کیا کیا. ہنسنے لگا لعین جو رونے لگی بطول، غاصب نے سیدہ کی گواہی نہ کی قبول. خود سچا بن کے بی بی کو جھوٹا بنا دیا، اے شاہ انبیاء یہ مسلمان نے کیا کیا، اے شاہ انبیاء یہ مسلمان نے کیا کیا. جس گھر پہ آ کے رکتے تھے لینے اجازتیں، آ کے فرشتے عرش سے کرتے تھے زیارتیں، اس بے حیا نے اس گھر کو ہی جلا دیا. اے شاہ انبیاء یہ مسلمان نے کیا کیا. ممبر پہ فاطمہ کا مجرم بٹھا دیا. اے شاہ انبیاء یہ مسلمان نے کیا کیا.
دیواروں در کے بیچ ہے، دیواروں در کے بیچ ہے زہرا کی پسلیاں. علامہ 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 علامہ. دیواروں در کے بیچ ہے، دیواروں در کے بیچ ہے زہرا کی پسلیاں.
علامہ
जुल्म हुआ बाली सकीना पे क्यों इतना जुल्म हुआ अभी तमाचों के हैं अभी तमाचों के हैं रुखसार पर निशान अल्लामा अल्लामा बाली सकीना पे क्यों इतना जुल्म हुआ बाली सकीना पे क्यों इतना जुल्म हुआ अब भी तमाचों के हैं अब भी तमाचों के हैं रुखसार पर निशान अल्लामा मीसम करो दुआ के बन जाए फिर बकीर मीसम करो दुआ के बन जाए फिर बकीर मजलिस सुनो हमारा मजलिस सुनो हमारा जाके करे वहाँ
الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا حبيب الله السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذريته علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي السلام عليك يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب الأمر والعصر والزمان سيدي متى ترانا ونراك عجل الله لك ما وعدك من الناصر وظهور الأمر ورحمة الله وبركاته بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين